Part of the British Sky Broadcasting Network.
This week on NHRA Today, Scott snaps his scoreless streak at the Mid-South, while Forrest fires off win number 5 in Memphis. Amato regains his top fuel form, and a how-to debut for racing rookies. From the Mopar Parts Nationals at Englishtown, New Jersey, these stories and more on this edition of NHRA Today. In the past, when the traveling speed show of NHRA Winston Drag Racing arrived in Englishtown, New Jersey, it was the heat of summer. High 90 to 100 degree temperatures were not uncommon, and racers and fans alike did whatever they could to survive the sweltering conditions. But 1993 will be different, because we now arrive at Old Bridge Township Raceway Park 6 weeks earlier, at a time when cooler air should make the on-track performances the only heat to keep an eye on. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this edition of NHRA Today. I'm Steve Evans. Now, if you have any doubts as to how much difference the move from July to May could make, well, many experts around here are predicting that all the national records in the pro categories could get clobbered if Mother Nature cooperates. And right now, the forecast is, well, perfect. In the next half hour, we'll bring you a preview of the 24th running of the Mopar Parts Nationals, and we'll take you back a week to the highlights from Memphis. There's plenty of speed and excitement in store. But first, all this talk about cool weather has me asking one question. What's hot? Due to a prior racing engagement at the Goodies Mid-South Nationals, motorsports mogul Kenny Bernstein was unable to attend last weekend's full-day qualifying session at the Indianapolis 500. But thanks to a satellite transmission, he was able to watch all 3 of his cars and offer TV commentary right from the track in Memphis.
It's a tough weekend. You've got 3 cars at Indianapolis, and of course Brad on the West Coast at Sears Point with the NASCAR, and we're here in Memphis. It's a little tough. It's not easy this time around.
Another top fuel operation affected by Indy 500 activities was the Jack Clark Taco Bell team, whose main driver, John Andretti, spent last weekend in Indianapolis in search of a ride. Crew member Andy Woods is the designated backup driver, but last weekend's contest found Doug Foxworth occupying the seat.
Andy just recently finished his license Saturday night. They didn't think he was quite ready to unleash him at a national event. They asked me to come up and sign on the license, help Andy get going, so that's how I got involved.
I just went out last weekend and got my license, and hopefully I'll get a few runs in the future here and get a shot at making a few races.
So far, the team has made 2 semifinal rounds in 2 races with 2 different drivers, and that's what's hot. In addition to the usual competition here this weekend, 8 pro stock drivers will be vying for bragging rights and $75,000 in cash in the 9th running of the Budweiser Challenge. And here's how that field will line up. And you know what? All of those drivers were in the thick of things last weekend in Memphis. So here is Dave McClellan to tell us what happened.
One surprising name to find at the top half of the Pro Stock qualifying order at the Goodies Mid-South Nationals presented by TNN was Steve Schmidt, who had earned the number 6 spot with a 7:22 elapsed time. The strong showing by the White Cutlass is due primarily to an engine program begun at Steve's shop with the assistance of Dale Ike, formerly with the Ekman-Orndorff operation.
We made significant gains in our motor program in the last 2.5 weeks, and we felt that if we just did a good job getting down the racetrack, we'd be okay.
Steve's first round opponent was fellow Indianan David Rampy, who had recently moved north from Alabama. And at the green, David took a huge lead and the victory when Schmidt encountered problems.
We misanticipated the track. The track was a little better than we thought. With this cloud cover, it cooled off, and we just didn't have enough clutch in the car. And hurt the clutch of it.
David Rampy's win advanced him to the 2nd round, where his opponent would be the youngest member of the Johnson family juggernaut, the number 3 qualifier, Kurt Johnson. In the battle of Pro Stock rookies, both drivers reacted as one, and as they worked their way through the gears, Rampy in the far lane edged ahead of the Torco Olds to take a narrow victory and a spot in the Final 4. Meeting David's Winnebago Olds in that round was another Indiana native, Bob Glidden, who had defeated Winston points leader Warren Johnson in round 2. And in the closest race of the day, both cars ran identical elapsed times, with Glidden's Motorcraft Ford Probe emerging victorious by only 0.02 of a second. Bob's final round opponent was number 1 qualifier Scott Jeffreyon, who had a relatively easy time in reaching the 10th final round of his career. And it was here in Memphis that the Mopar parts driver captured that elusive first ever win with a dominant on-track performance that led to an emotional victory celebration.
It's just unbelievable. I can't even describe it. These guys from Wayne County stuck behind me, Mopar, Dodge. You know, it toughened up my skin and all that. Man, I didn't want to wait that long, but boy, does it feel good to do it. I really feel our team is really starting to gel, and it's taken quite some time, but boy, I mean, we really feel good on this team.
Scott's win propels him from 5th to 3rd in the Winston points standings behind Warren Johnson and Larry Morgan, while Kurt Johnson and Bob Glidden round out the top 5.
Moving this event from early July has really put the pressure on the professional crews. After all, they were doing battle just a few days ago in Memphis, and the Tennessee tangle in Top Fuel was full of tension, especially for one well-known driver. Here's Dave again.
The first round of Top Fuel qualifying at the Goodies Mid-South Nationals did not go well for reigning Winston champion Joe Amato.
The car dropped the cylinder, and for some reason the motor decided to split in half. It's hard to tell once you get that much damage. Something broke inside, whether it dropped the valve or something. It's hard to say because there's so much damage, but it really burned the car to the ground. I mean, it burned my helmet and my fire suit, my gloves. It was a bad fire, really.
Problems have plagued the Valvoline team all season as they have struggled to find a successful combination.
You're always tempted to try some little thing, a bigger pump, a clutch change, or something that'll throw you a curve. And the hard part is to sort all this stuff out, and that's why the crew chiefs really earn their pay.
Joe eventually qualified 10th with a 4:98 elapsed time, but gremlins continued to haunt the team. During Sunday's pre-race warm-up, a last-minute problem with new plug wires was discovered, giving Joe further cause for concern as he prepared to face Rance McDaniel. In that race, Amato responded to the weekend stress with a superb hole shot reaction that propelled him to victory by a mere 0.03 of a second. In round 2, Joe was handed a fortunate victory when his opponent Doug Herbert red-lighted, but it proved to be a costly one as he experienced yet another engine problem. In the Final Four, Joe met up with comeback kid Corey McLenithan, who had qualified 6th. But as the cars left the line, the Mack Attack dragster in the near lane went up in smoke, while Amato struggled to the finish line running on 7 cylinders. Joe's opponent in the final round was Eddie Hill, whose Benzoyl Nuclear Banana 2 had set a new track record of 4.82 seconds. But at the green, Eddie was slow to react, and Joe streaked to the title, his 4.97 beating Hill's 4.93.
I knew it was going to be a close race, you know, and I had to do that in the first round, too. Actually, I won 2 rounds today on reaction time. Sometimes the car is a little bit down, the driver has to step up a little bit, and our car was struggling this weekend, and the team did a real good job keeping it running, and I have to give them a lot of credit for the win, and I try to shore up the walls a little bit, and, you know, when you're lucky, everything goes your way.
That win vaults Joe into 2nd place in the Winston point standings behind Hill, with Ed McCulloch 3rd, Kenny Bernstein 4th, and Mike Dunn rounding out the top 5.
One of the real pleasant surprises of the '93 season has been the performance of the man that drives this car, Scott Coletta. He won the Winston Invitational and has been the #1 qualifier at the last 2 national events, all with a lot of help from his new crew chief, the 1987 Winston Top Fuel champion, Dick LaHaye. Now, at this race 4 years ago, Dick LaHaye turned in one of the bravest performances I can remember.
Well, I remember the '89 Summer Nationals very well at Englishtown, New Jersey. First round, we had a little problem, and the car shook real hard, and I refractured a vertebrae in my back and actually detached a rib from it. Fortunately, I guess I had enough sense to sit in the car and let people help me in and out of it and not really try to injure myself. We raced Gary Ormsby in the final round, and I run 5:11, 283, and which was our 2nd quickest run of the event. It still brings back good memories.
Racing with a cracked vertebrae is no laughing matter. Neither is racing with cracked teeth. Right now, we turn to Frank Hawley for this week's Fast Fact, which deals with the heavy toll horsepower it takes on gears.
As most of us know, today's Top Fuel dragsters make over 4,000 horsepower. Now all of that power is transferred through a giant 4-disc 10-inch clutch along a drive shaft to the pinion gear, then to the ring gear, then to the axle, and eventually to the tire. For some time now, the weak link in all of this has been the pinion gear, this one right here. This is a 9-inch Ford rear end, and as you can see at any one time, only about 1.5 of these teeth on the pinion is in contact with the ring gear. That means that 4,000 horsepower is trying to bend this tooth over, and it does. And they actually break right here. The racers report that they only get 1 or 2 runs on this rear end. Well, that's not very practical. Now, some of the manufacturers figure that bigger's better. So what they've done is they've made a bigger ring and pinion. U.S. Gear actually made this unit. It's 11.5 inches in diameter and has a much larger pinion. Although the pinions have the same number of teeth, the teeth on this pinion are much thicker and will withstand more abuse. Now, this ring and pinion won't fit in a regular housing, so they had to build a special housing to hold it. Is this better? Well, some of the racers using the large ring and pinions have reported 20 and 30 runs on a ring and pinion set. It may be a lot more money to start with, but I think it'll pay for itself in the long run.
Exclusive.
Welcome back to the Mopar Parts Nationals. Just to prove the performance potential of this track this time of year, did you know that the first 5 second runs in the alcohol classes were made right here in May of 1989 by Bob Newberry and Peter Gallen? Well, they were. But the fives were quite common last weekend in Memphis, where Bob Fry went on a quest.
Last year at the Goodies Mid-South Nationals, I looked everywhere for Elvis. I even checked the concession stands, and still no King of Rock and Roll. So this year, I've changed my strategy. Now, I heard that Elvis's favorite race car was here, so I'll just go over there and wait. But where could he be?
Without a doubt, I'm sure he'd be over by the limo.
Check the limo!
Not this limo, the other limo.
This has got to be the one. It's even got a pretty driver. Excuse me, is this the limo that...
Not this limo, that limo.
That's it. It has to be Elvis's favorite race car. It's Jim Nielsen's jet-powered Mercedes-Benz stretch limo.
All those Elvis sightings, I thought I'd come over here and check it out because this is his favorite race car, and it's got a whole lot of hunk of burning love in the back here. It's definitely the fastest prom car if you want to get to the prom. A lot of people complain about the spilt cocktails on their forehead when I hit the afterburner. I built a jet limousine because I had a limousine service in Newport Beach, California, and I had a jet car, and I thought I'll put the two together and see what I could work out.
Jim was a sportsman racer before going to jets. In fact, he drove alcohol funny cars for 2 years.
The difference between racing alcohol funny cars and jet cars is the jet car usually goes straight unless something breaks. I'm used to my old funny car with a shorter wheelbase. Whenever I'd leave the line, usually the front end was in the air, and then you'd wonder which way it was going to go, right or left.
Complete with his specially made tuxedo fire suit, Jim took part in the USA-Japan Drag Festival last November. After the success of that trip, Nielsen now has plans to build a Lamborghini jet limousine for international events. The jet limo has been a crowd pleaser no matter where on earth it races.
It's got the beauty of the length and the limousine look, and it's also very fast. The best time is 6:10 ET, and it's ran 2:67, so she's pretty quick.
Nielsen's limo wasn't the only thing with a hot streak. Top alcohol funny cars Jeff Rapp kept on rocking with an impressive narrow victory over Pat Austin in the final.
I'm gonna hide it. You can't even explain. It's hard to explain how good you feel winning one of these things, let alone two of them.
Now here are the rest of the winners from the Goodies Mid-South Nationals.
Bob, I know you're real disappointed you didn't find Elvis at the limo this year, but I got you a little something, a little Elvis finder. Maybe next year you'll be able to find him.
Yeah, with that I'll probably find Oz before I find Elvis. For NHRA Today, I'm Bob, taking care of business, Fry.
3 years ago, right here in the funny car final round, Johnny West hit the right-hand wall so hard he was knocked unconscious. The car barreled down the racetrack. He had a fiery crash, fortunately not seriously injured. Now, last week in Memphis, round one of funny car, we thought maybe a repeat performance of that kind of thing. Kenji Okazaki apparently lifted right after the launch. Then the car crossed over the racetrack, grazed the left-hand wall, and Kenji went on about his business. Big Jim Dunn owns this car that Kenji was in. What happened to him?
Well, this car was built for me, so my arms are a lot longer than Kenji's. We built a seat for him to bring it up. And when he hit the throttle, and it accelerated forward. He pulls back on the steering wheel where I wouldn't. And when he did, it just popped off in his hands because they made us put quick connectors on this year that you can disconnect in case we're in a wreck and they got to get us out. To disconnect, all you do is pull the pin and out it comes. So here's what he was driving down there with.
It may be hard to believe with over 24 national event wins, but John Force has never been able to put the combination together here at the Mopar Parts Nationals. And he's had that same problem with Memphis. Well, until last week. Here's Dave's last report.
At this year's Goodies Mid-South Nationals, probably the most talked about incident was John Force's fiery crash from last season. But the two-time Winston champion says that he is no longer affected by that accident.
I don't look back. I enjoy watching it on TV. It's going to happen again. It's a matter of time, if not me, someone else. But that's all part of the bull ride. When you push your car to the edge like this, something's going to let go. We're like test pilots, and if you don't want the job, get out of the seat.
As a test pilot, John's 1992 Memphis mishap also earned him a tongue-in-cheek presentation from the makers of his safety equipment. But during the first 2 rounds of eliminations, John was all business in his approach to a race he had never won.
I think we've always approached Memphis wrong. I think we come in looking at the track and being a little bit edgy, watching the heat and the track conditions, and we're not now. We're low ET here. We're racing it very aggressive, and I think we got a good shot at winning.
John's opponent in the Final Four would be the winner of the race between Chuck Etchells and Gordy Bonnet, who had set low ET of the event in round number 1. In a duel of Daytonas, Bonnet's Hawaiian vacation entry in the near lane outran the Nobody Beats the Whiz machine to take a narrow victory and advance to the Final Four confrontation with the Castrol Cutlass. This battle between the 2 quickest cars in eliminations was all force from start to finish, and John stood on the verge of his first Memphis triumph. The only obstacle to that goal was the Pioneer Electronics Daytona driven by Tom Hoover. But Force left nothing to chance as he snatched away the low ET of the event on his way to a dominant final round win that ended an exhausting week.
If I hadn't seen so many pictures this year of my crash last year from fans being signed, but everyone really was concerned of my health, but I kept my team focused. Coyle was watching, and I was watching. I was just so happy to get out of that car at the other end.
With 5 victories in 6 events, John has a commanding lead in the Winston points standings over Al Hoffman. Cruz Pedregon remains in 3rd, while Tom Hoover vaults into 4th place ahead of Chuck Etchells.
That is about the most worn out I think I've ever seen John Force. But I'll bet a ride in this baby would wake him up. Yep, that's it, the Plymouth Prowler concept car. And there's rumors floating around that Chrysler might put this into limited production. You say, ha, right, Evans. Hey, they built the Viper, didn't they? For all of us at NHRA Today, I'm Steve Evans. See you then on TNN.
NHRA Today is a presentation of Diamond P Sports.